The AFCA's 35 Under 35 Coaches Leadership Institute is the premier education and networking opportunity for the country's top young coaches. Full-time assistant or head coaches who will be 35 years old or younger on January 1st are encouraged to apply between July 1st and 31st of this year. For information on how to apply for the AFCA 35 Under 35 Coaches Leadership Institute, the required materials for the application, and more, please visit afca.com/35 under 35. Welcome to this week's episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm. This week, we sit down with Western Kentucky offensive coordinator Drew Hollingshead. In this conversation, Coach Hollingshead discusses getting established in the coaching profession, working under legendary coach Mike Leach, and becoming an offensive coordinator for the first time. But first, a word from CoachComm.
Deuce left, check with me. If they're in quarters match, we're going to Pittsburgh or Ohio.
They're in zero.
Let's go Hippo, Seattle, wide choice. If we call the protection right, it's 6.
When a play call is the difference between winning and losing, your headset choice could be your most important decision. When the call counts, CoachComm is the only choice for clear, dependable communication. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
We got it, guys. Good job.
Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Hollingshead.
Coach, what's going on, man? How are you?
What's going on, man? I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time, man. I know how busy things can be for a ball coach these days, and spend 45 minutes with me, man. It means a whole heck of a lot. But let's go ahead and dive in, man. Since speaking of how much time that you got, when did you know you want to be a part of this great profession?
Yeah, I think I got a similar story to a lot of people in the profession. I'm a coach's kid, so my dad was a high school coach in Texas for a long time and college coach in Texas for just as long. So I grew up in the profession, grew up going to games and being in field houses and locker rooms and all that stuff. And I always told myself growing up I wanted to play for as long as I could and then get into coaching. So I got a couple of degrees, but realized that I wasn't going to be happy if I wasn't on the field coaching. So I knew pretty early on that this is what I wanted to do, and kind of set out on that career path pretty early, and trying to take every step of the way, as possible and as careful as I can, and try to make the most out of it.
Well, you mentioned that your dad was a coach, and you mentioned both high school and collegiate level. So I'm out of curiosity, obviously. You're in the college game, and you've been in Texas, you've been to East Texas, you've been to Washington, you've been to Mississippi, Kentucky. So obviously there's this volatility that kind of comes with it. Did you experience any of that as a young man, as a young boy, I guess, growing up with a dad and coaching?
Yeah, a little bit. I was pretty fortunate. My dad kind of came up through the ranks in Texas. So my dad started as a high school coach. My dad went to school at SMU, played at SMU, and then kind of did the same thing. When he got done playing, he got into coaching. So started in high school, kind of worked his way up, became a head coach pretty early in his career, won a couple state championships. And then he was kind of one of those first ones at that time in the state where high school coaches were starting to make the jump to college.
Right.
So he got hired at Texas A&M. But I think when I was like 3 or 4 years old. So I was born in Odessa, Texas. Okay. So when I was like 4, we moved from Odessa to College Station. We lived there for like 10 years. And then we moved again to another spot in Texas. So we moved probably 3 or 4 times, but it was all in the state. So it wasn't like a crazy move from cross country or anything like that. And I didn't realize it until later on. My dad was kind of, he kind of explained this to me when I got into coaching was, I didn't want to do that to you and your mom. I didn't want to keep moving across the country and all that stuff. So he was really fortunate in his career to have opportunities within the state and all that stuff. So, you can tell I listened to that advice pretty well because I'm moving all across the country.
That's right.
But it was a great life. I loved it, and thank him for all the guidance and wisdom every single day. But yeah, it's a little different now.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. Well, he kind of tricked y'all a little bit because for people that don't know the Texas map, moving from Odessa to to Bryan, College Station. If you're on the East Coast, that's about 3 or 4 states that you're hopping over.
Yeah, it's just pretty far. Yeah,
how big Texas is. But yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, obviously, you want to play. That you want to be a part of the profession, but you do get the opportunity to extend your career. You go and play quarterback at the University of Houston, which I want to hit on that a little bit here shortly when there's some natural plugs for it. But after your time at University of Houston, you were very quickly in the profession. How did you already have an opportunity lined up? You went over to coach at Hyde Park Baptist High School. What did you do to make sure that you already had something lined up very quickly upon finishing your playing career?
Yeah, I think I hit that point in my career that most guys have. I knew it wasn't going to work out for me in the pros, and so I kind of threw some feelers out there pretty early on towards the end of my career. To I didn't know if I wanted to coach in high school or not, and the head coach at the time at Hyde Park was a guy by the name of Dean Campbell, who's kind of a legendary guy in the state of Texas, and he knew my dad pretty well, and Coach Campbell, I appreciate him so much. He knew what I was going through as far as, coming off from playing and trying to get into the coaching profession. And my parents were living in Austin at the time. That's where Hyde Park is. So they were Coach Campbell was like, hey, just come over during the afternoon for practice and kind of get your feet wet, help us out, coach offense and defense and all that stuff. And that was I saw that as a pretty good transition from, playing to kind of get my feet wet and see if this is really what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And really loved it, enjoyed it so much, and knew kind of there that I was going to get the coaching bug pretty quickly. And that's kind of where it started. So I was excited to get that opportunity. But yeah, I started to, to answer your original question, send out emails, send out texts, just kind of guys that I knew. And obviously my dad was pretty helpful and kind of, reaching out to some of his contacts and seeing if there was any opportunities for me to just get the foot in the door. And Hyde Park was where I landed, and that was kind of where it started,
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned the University of Houston deal. Now you'll have to refresh my memory a little bit in terms of 09 to 12, but as I've been doing this podcast longer and longer, there's a couple spots where you start talking about where coaches who go on to, be head coaches or offensive innovators and things like that. There's a couple spots that kind of continue to pop up, Mount Union, places like that where a lot of coaches kind of come in, they either play there, they coach there for a little bit, but, expands their network. And University of Houston is one of these places, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that continue to pop up. What were you able to learn there as a player that's kind of helped equip you for your career?
Man, it was really, really awesome. I tell people this all the time. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head as far as like a coaching fraternity.
Yeah.
At that point in time from 2000, I was there from 2009 to 2012. I counted it in my head. I think, Coach Sumlin was our head coach. At one point in time from 2009 to 2012, there was 7 FBS head coaches on staff there at one time.
That's what
who eventually had become head coaches. So I realized pretty quickly, even as a player, like, I better start paying attention if this is really what I wanted to do, because there are some really, really, smart football minds and then great people as well. Guys that understood the profession, knew how to coach, knew how to recruit, knew how to get in touch with their players. But again, like I said, just great football minds. So I would look around at practice, every single day, and we had good teams and good players, but there was a reason why we had good teams, because we had really, really good coaches and guys that I kind of looked up to. So, Cliff Kingsbury, Dana Holgrenson, the Spavital brothers, just guys like that. Tony Levine, who took over for Coach Sumlin when Coach Sumlin went to Texas A&M. So, and not just them, there's a bunch more guys who were, pretty big in the success that we had at that time. But, you're right. You kind of sit back and kind of look around at all the guys you're surrounded with, and there was no secret to why we were having success. And it was a great time to be there. So I learned an infinite amount, which was cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm happy you kind of threw those names out there, because I know that time was super congested with just some really, really good ball coaches, man. So what an opportunity. it kind of sucks when you're a player and you want to coach, but in the moment you're just out there playing. You know what I'm saying? Like, now if you could go back and probably look at some of the stuff, maybe sitting on some of those meetings and with some of those guys, I'm sure you would have took that opportunity. Now, after that first year, coaching there at Hyde Park, you actually take a unique opportunity, and you're going to do an internship up in Canada in the CFL with Toronto. What led you to that? That's I've done this podcast enough to where I see some redundant things, but this is something I hadn't seen yet.
It's an interesting story. So when my dad was head coach, he coached at Odessa Permian there in Texas, and he kept one of those deals everybody goes through. He took his staff down to the University of Miami for a staff retreat 1 year. This story kind of goes through a couple decades, but back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, while he was down there on the staff retreat, ran into a couple guys from some other high school staffs across the country and across the Southeast, and met a couple guys who ended up after their time at high school working in the CFL. So I had met them through the years growing up and things like that, just being a coach's kid. You run into all the coaches and things like that at AFCA and whatnot. As I got done playing all that stuff, I kind of kept in touch with some of those same guys that my dad was friends with, that were still coaching in the CFL. So, in that process of reaching out to people, trying to, get my name out there, get the foot in the door, I reached out to a couple guys who were attached to the Toronto Argonauts at the time. And, the head coach, Tony Milanovich at the time, he was great. He was like, hey, if you got some time, we're getting ready to start our season. This was like probably late April, early May of 2012, going into the summer, going into the CFL season, and like, hey, we got mini camp coming up, we got the draft coming up. Come up here and spend a week and just hang out with us and kind of go through this process. So I went up to Toronto, spent a week, sitting in install meetings, sitting in draft prep. Like, I tell people this all the time. You see those videos of like the NFL draft and they're sitting in rooms with prospects and they're peppering them with questions. Well, like, I got to do that in the CFL. So like, from that side of it was really cool to see, how much the game is different and how they treat the players there and how much the game is truly the same, especially with some of the American influence. So just a really, really cool, opportunity that I got to do and spent couple weeks up there to sit in meetings and learn a lot. So, it was a really cool experience. Glad I did it, and it helped me out for sure.
Yeah. When you pull back the, and I'll preface this a little bit. One of the guys, me and you were talking a little bit beforehand, but actually our offensive coordinator when I was at Texas A&M Commerce, he was like a Mark Trestman disciple at the point in time. And Mark Trestman, I think, was in American football at that time, but he ends up in the CFL. And so I start watching a little bit, and you're seeing the same concepts, but obviously you have this extra man, you have the pre-snap motion and stuff like that to give it a little bit of eyewash. But ultimately, it was a lot of similarities in regards to some of the stuff that we were even doing offensively at the time when I was at Commerce. From a football standpoint, were you able to walk away with some stuff, even though the game is different enough?
Yeah. No, definitely, and I think it was. The Argonauts were coming off of. I don't want to be wrong on this, but I think they were coming off actually winning the Grey Cup the year before. So it was, learning and sitting in install meetings. They were kind of going over like, the stuff that they did well, stuff that they were changing. From a front office standpoint, they were talking about guys that they were going to lose, that they were going to get back on contracts. They had a really good quarterback at the time, a really good receiver. So they were kind of talking through some of the contract negotiation stuff with that. But, from a football standpoint, when you watch it, it's a little different because of, there's 12 men on the field. Yeah. There's 4 guys in motion at a time. Right. They're running towards the line of scrimmage. So it looks different. But what I gained an appreciation for was because of how different it was and because of the different rules, the coaching had to be even better. You know what I'm saying? Like you had to really coach technique. You had to coach scheme. You really had to learn how to use those rules to your advantage. It's definitely an offensive game. I have a lot of respect for the defensive coaches in the CFL. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you make a living up there and being on defense, but it's a really cool experience. I'm glad I did it and definitely learned a lot and definitely brought some stuff back to this side of the border to use some of it, you know?
That's right, man. Well, I'm going to blow your mind. Anthony Cavillo was the quarterback, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So my best friend ended up playing for Toronto. And so I flew up as soon as I got out of the profession, hopped in this AFCA role. I flew up and caught a game in Toronto.
Yeah.
And, got to watch him go to work. And man, the funny thing is I went to the game and I walked out and I said, man, the NFL needs to get some DBs out of the CFL, because if they can cover a dude running with a 20-yard head start, like, he can cover anybody. So that was my takeaway from it too. All right, man. So you come back to the States, a little bit better than what you left, and you end up in a role as a quality control coach over at Texas A&M Commerce. Just talk a little bit about how that opportunity arose and why you took it, and how you linked up with Coach Carthel.
Yeah, I'm gonna do you a solid here and kind of plug the convention. So this is why going to the convention is super important. So I go to the convention that year after I get done playing with my dad, and I'm like a lot of people that go there for their first time. I got resumes in hand and kind of shaking hands and meeting people and doing what I can to just get my name out there. And I go to the Texas get together and I run into Colby Carthel, and Colby and I knew each other from, obviously being from Texas, and he had been in the ranks for a little bit, a good bit there. And he was just getting his first head coaching opportunity at Texas A&M Commerce. So, I met him there. We had a great talk. I kind of, gave the classic spiel. I'll come work for free and do whatever I need to do to get my foot in the door. And he actually took me up on it. He let me work for free for about 6 months and let me do whatever I could to help him out and get that program restarted. And I thank him every day for that. So started out as a QC, you and I were talking off the mic just about all the roles you have at that level. I was QC before I became a GA, but I was coaching quarterbacks. I was the equipment manager. I was setting up breakfast for our guys every morning at 6 a.m. I was the NFL liaison. I was talking to scouts, even though we didn't have any NFL guys for a couple of years, so there was a bunch of different roles, recruiting coordinator, academics, all that stuff. So just a really, really, it was hard work because of all the hats you had to wear, but it was really an eye-opening experience just to what all the other stuff that goes into football at this level that doesn't really involve the sport and doesn't involve coaching. So it definitely made me a more well-rounded coach. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, man. You like you said, we talked a little bit off the air. I just think this is an interesting perspective. You said kind of restart the program. Whoever those guys were before y'all were really bad. No, I'm kidding. I was on the staff before he showed up, and so they had to come fix all of our mistakes. But one of the big things that you pinpointed was just the roster, the ability to kind of revamp the roster. And this is obviously pre-transfer portal era. How important was it, like, and how quickly could you notice the change when you went and got people that kind of fit what you were looking for in that program?
Right. Yeah. And it's not unlike turning over any other program, right? Like you had to change the culture. So I think one of the most important things at the time was the staff, a lot of the staff that was coming to Commerce, other than myself and a few other guys, that first initial staff, they were coming from West Texas A&M. Right. So if anybody listening to this knows about WT, at that point in time, they were, very, very good, competing for national championships, always in the Final Four for the past 3-4 years. And so they had a tradition. They knew how to win. They had a bunch of guys that knew how to win. So that was kind of the first initial step was, what do we do and how do we change the culture to make it unacceptable to handle losing anymore? So a lot of that had to do with flipping the roster and kind of getting some of that bad juju out of there or whatnot. And there were some great players too. I mean, there were some guys that were on the roster that played for us for the next 2 years that had been through some tough times, that stayed around, understood the vision, and ended up being really good players for us. But yeah, recruiting was the name of the game, and that's kind of what Colby Carthel he's known for. He's a great recruiter, and he kind of gave us the keys to some rental cars, and he said, "Go find good players. I don't care where they're at. Make sure we get good players in here." So we all went out on the road, and everywhere from Texas high schools to Texas JUCOs to even out to California. We ended up going out to California for a lot of our good players and hitting up the JUCOs out there. So, it's not uncommon now when you look at the landscape of college football to see total roster changes going on throughout the fall and the spring. And that's what we were doing initially in that first year. I think somewhat like 60% of the roster changed by the time we made it to that fall camp from that spring. So yeah, it was a unique time to be there and really seeing that kind of transform, but a really cool experience because I got to see the groundwork that you have to lay to turn a program over like that, and to being what it is now and where they're at now is really exciting because it felt like I had a part of that, which was really cool.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, I kind of segue. I would love to hear how you got this opportunity, but I will preface this with you basically end up almost in the same roles there at Washington State. You get the opportunity to QC, you get the opportunity to GA. So first talk about how that opportunity arose, and then secondly, talk about the major differences of being a D2 QC GA versus being a FBS P5 QC GA. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll start with just how I ended up getting there. So obviously, Texas connections again kind of helped me. So Mike Leach was at Washington State at the time, and Coach Leach was actually pretty heavily in my life for a while. When I was coming up playing quarterback at that time in Texas, that was like wanting to go to Texas Tech and play for Mike Leach was kind of like the dream if you played that position. So he recruited me a little bit at Texas Tech. I ended up going to Houston and playing for some Tech guys. So I kind of got my foot in the door with the Red Raider connection for a little bit. And when I got into coaching and spent those first couple of years at Commerce, I kept in touch with some of those guys. And Coach Leach needed a GA kind of around that 2016 year. And he had some guys reach out to me and asked if I was interested, and obviously was really interested and wanted to go up there and kind of help him out. So yeah, Coach Leach calls me one day, and this was like late at night. I don't even think I had his number anymore, but he calls me up and he says, "Hey, this is Mike Leach. You want to come be a part of the staff?" And I was like, "Yeah, Coach, I'd love to." And then he's like, "All right, sounds good." And he hung up on me. So it was like a 30-second phone call. And I drove from Dallas, Texas to Pullman, Washington in 3 days and kind of started my journey from there. But, we kind of, you asked about the difference in being a QCGA at the Division II level and the Power 5 level. It's, the football work isn't very different. You got to input data, you got to, make coffee, you got to do whatever you got to do to help out the full-time guys. I just think at the Division II level, there's obviously less people. So those roles, the QC roles, those GA roles, become even more important because it's almost like you're an actual coach. You got to coach a position, you got to, handle the equipment, you got to handle kind of the off-field recruiting, academics, all that stuff that, there's separate departments for at the Power 5 level, where there's really not at the Division II level. So, I was a jack of all trades at the Division II level, but that learning and being around that level instilled some hard working qualities that I felt like I needed when I got to the Power 5 level that kind of helped me kickstart my career. And just because I was willing to do more because I had done more at that level and really wanted to help out as much as I could. So when I got that opportunity at the Power 5 level, I kind of kept that same grind mentality and it worked out for me, Yeah,
well, it sure did work out for you because that kind of leads me to the next question. In 2020, Coach Leach takes the job in Mississippi State, and obviously any point in time you're having success and it leads to, your head ball coach taking another job. There's some guys that are going to get a new job out of it, and there's some guys that are going to kind of get left behind. And, especially sometimes when you're not a full-time guy, leave some question marks up in the air. What was that transition like, and what was that hard work that you did? How did that put you in position to be taken to Mississippi State with Coach?
Yeah. going back to the when I was at Washington State, I kind of went up there with the mindset of like, whatever I need to do to help out, I'm going to do that. And I was single at the time. I didn't have my wife, and I didn't have any kids or anything. So I was like, I'll stay up as long as I have to, be here at the office as long as I have to help our guys and help our program win. And if anybody knows anything about Coach Leach, he's not a morning guy. He's a burn the midnight oil guy. So really, really good in terms of, if you work for him, you can wake up late, take the kids to school, kind of, take your time getting into the office, and he wants you to get your work done, expect you to get your work done. But during the season, we're a burn till, midnight, 2 a.m. trying to get all the stuff done. And that's just the way he works. So I spent a lot of late nights up there helping him and our offensive staff and even our defensive staff just do what I can to help us win ball games. And typical GA work, film input, all the recruiting stuff that goes into that, and the typical GA grunt work that you got to do to help prove your worth and make a spot for yourself within the program. And I really just wanted to do whatever I could, never say no, work as hard as I can, stay however long I can just to prove myself. And again, work for some really, really good coaches and some good people. And I think they kind of recognize that want to within me to be a really good coach. And I think when that happened, when they recognized that, I think because they were good player or good people and good coaches, they wanted to kind of, help me and invest in me a little more. It just felt that way. So got a lot of great advice, got a lot of great tips, got a lot of helping hands along the way. And you kind of touched on it. When he got the job at Mississippi State, I felt good about the work that I had done, that, hey, even though I was a QC at the time, I think, to help him kind of establish himself at the next program, hopefully he kind of sees the work that I did and he would want me to come with him. And ultimately he did. And so we went down there to Mississippi State and started all over again.
Yeah. Now, just that time frame, because a lot of guys have gone through this and will go through this. How much time were you kind of in limbo in regards to not knowing? Yeah.
Again, kind of around the convention time too. So if anybody remembers this time, this was 2019, mid-January. Coach gets the job right around the first day of the convention. So whatever day, around the national championship game, obviously. So
yeah.
He had taken the job. He was in Starkville for a couple of days, left to go back home to kind of get his stuff ready to go. And then move out. So there was about a week or two limbo where I kind of just was, hey, do I have this job? Do I not? I was in Nashville for the convention at the time. So I flew back to Washington from Nashville, spent a couple of days kind of just walking around the office, just kind of didn't really know kind of what was going on. And some people don't know this too, but, Washington State hired pretty quick after Coach Leach took the job, so they hired Nick Rolovich.
Yeah.
So I was in the office when Coach Rolovich got there, just kind of, hey, Coach, if you need any help, I'm here, kind of the whole thing.
Right.
So, and then in typical Coach Leach fashion, he gets down to Mississippi in like a week and a half later, and he calls me and he's like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Well, Coach, I'm in Washington. Where are you?" And he's like, "Well, I'm in Mississippi. I need some stuff. So get down here as fast as possible." So I was in Washington because he needed some stuff from up there. So I grabbed it and flew down to Mississippi and never looked back. So it was a weird time.
Well, you know what? I tell you what, man. Coach Leach, been the legend that he was, and I'm gonna give you the opportunity to kind of share your thoughts on him. But as we've done so many of these podcasts, I'm always like, man, we need to cut this type of topic out. We need to cut every Mike Leach story out of all the podcasts that we have and just make a Mike Leach compilation podcast, because it would be insane. I think people would just be laughing, and also just realize the impact that he's had on so many coaches. But with that being said, he's a huge part of your career, your development, putting you in a place where you are now. What does he mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, he means a whole hell of a lot in terms of just the being a friend to me, a mentor, somebody that I looked up to, and just a legend in the game. But he blessed me with a couple opportunities that I don't know if I deserved at the time, and really saw some things in me that maybe I didn't see in myself, and really appreciate him for all of that, because led to some really cool opportunities for me and helped me in my career. So, not only just a great coach, a great person, but really a great mentor to young guys in the profession, and unique in the way that I think that he really didn't care who you were as a person or a coach or anything like that. Didn't care about your resume. If he felt like you could help the program, or it felt like you could help him in terms of offensively or within the program in any way, he was going to let you have a voice, and he was going to let you have a say. And whether or not he listened to you, that's a different thing. But right. he felt very good about, it didn't really matter who you are or where you came from or how you got to this position. Everybody matters, and it's important to have those type of people in the program. So very, very early on, he kind of, gave me the reins to kind of help out with coaching quarterbacks and having some say offensively with, what we were doing and how we can make our team and our offense better. And as the years went on, he gained a lot more trust in me and helped me, and within my career, but wanted me to help out as much as I could. So I really, really owe him a lot for my career and just helping me out and teaching me a bunch of valuable lessons that I even, use to this day. I'm sure I'm like a lot of the Mike Leach guys and from the tree that like you spend enough time around Coach Leach, you can get frustrated with him pretty quickly. Yeah. And then, you turn around a couple weeks later and you're talking to the team or you're talking to a position room, and you'll say some things and you're like, dang, that's exactly what Coach Leach would have said. So I use a lot of that same mentality and coaching, coaching points with our guys even today. Yeah. So his legacy lives on. There's no doubt.
Yeah, the Leachisms. Yeah, they still exist, man. I hear them from a lot of you guys. You talked about the special things that he done for you in your career, and we've talked about the opportunity at QCGA, work with quarterbacks. He moved you over to opportunity to coach in the SEC, QC quarterbacks. But probably one of the most pivotal opportunities that you got was to be promoted to full-time. That's what we all work for. Mm-hmm. And for your first full-time collegiate job to be a SEC receiver's job, I mean, that's life-changing. Yeah. What went around that? How did that promotion come about?
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to even my time at Washington State. I've said this before, but I was so excited to join that program and work for Coach Leach because of kind of the guys that had gone through that same path. I'm thinking about, Lincoln is kind of the big one, Lincoln Riley, and kind of his career trajectory. He'd kind of done the same things for Coach Leach that I had done. So I had seen a path forward that if I just, worked my tail off and did the things I needed to do, hopefully down the line, he would see that and give me a promotion one day if it had worked out in my favor. So we get to Mississippi State. I spent a couple of years QCing, kind of doing the same things. And then we had one of our receivers coaches left to go to USC with Coach Riley, and we had the job open. And, I got to get around Coach Leach pretty early within that happening and just kind of reached out to him and said, hey, I want this job. I think that I can bring a unique, ability to coaching the position because I played quarterback. I've been in the offense for 8-9 years at that time and understood what we were looking for. And Coach Leach, before I even finished the conversation, said I was going to hire you anyway. So I don't know why we're having this conversation. So it was a very, eye-opening deal. And I went in there prepared to go 10 rounds with him, and he was prepared to give me that job. And so I thank him every day for that. And I just wanted to do a great job. I wanted to hit the ground running and prove that I was worthy of having that position and working for him and working for the rest of our coaches and really prove to our whole program and everybody involved that I was ready to take that step. So, it took a lot of hard work. I mean, it was, 6 years as a QCGA, even up until that point, not really knowing if it was ever going to happen. And then for it to happen like that was pretty special. And then again, the year that we had was awesome. So it was a great time, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, once again, just always want to be able to drop the nuggets for guys coming through the profession and just trying to figure this thing out. You're still a young coach at the moment, but you're a young guy at this point in time. You've worked your tail off. I'm assuming this is something you truly believe that opportunity was yours to take, right? But behind the scenes, like sometimes it's easy to see that, and he knew that you were the guy. But what kind of confidence does it take to say it's a job opening? I'm going to walk down here and walk into Coach Leach's office, close the door, and say, "Give me the job." What did it take? Did you have to, call dad, or just bounce some ideas in terms of how to approach that with people, or did you just walk down there and do it?
Well, I think it took a couple things. That's a great question. And to be honest with you, I had spent those 6 years, I felt really good about the work. I felt really good about who I was as a person and how I can interact and with our players, with the community, with the front office, with everybody involved. I had been there for 3 seasons or 2 seasons already. So everybody kind of knew me, knew my role within the program and knew how hard I worked and knew that I was hopefully ready to take the job. But even at that point too, there was question marks from the fan base. They didn't know me. They didn't really understand kind of where I was at and who I was and what I meant to the program, because I wasn't in the limelight like everybody else was. But I had such high confidence in the work that I had put in that in who Coach Leach was. He's not the type of guy where you send him a text or give a phone call. He's probably not going to read it, and he's probably not going to answer the phone call either. So that wasn't going to help me if I was going to do that anyway. So I caught him in the office one day, like you said, marched down there and closed the door and said, "Coach, I want this job. I feel like I'm ready, and I know that I'm ready," and put the work in, and he agreed with me. So I felt really good about the work and felt good about who I was within the program and how I could interject myself and make our program even better than we were at that time. And luckily, I think everybody kind of saw that same energy that I had, from those first 2 years and then wanted to carry it over. So, but again, surrounded by a lot of really good people too. It wasn't just me out there trying to, not to say that I was the only reason we were any good. There were some really good coaches and players and guys that believed in me, and we all believed in each other, and it made working there and for Coach Leach really special. So, to really long-winded to answer for your question, I felt like at that time in my career, even being so young, that I had to go prove myself even more at that time, but it wasn't going to start until Coach Leach saw the confidence that I had in myself. If he felt that and I presented that to him in the right way, then he would believe me and put a lot of trust in me to give me that job. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy you hit on one point, because it's a lot easier to talk about it since you did get the job. But, oftentimes you see this same situation, let's say exact same situation, and Coach, you got the job, so we can play this imagination game, I guess. But he says, "I'll let you know." And then you walk out, and then he calls some shiny object guy that, and I don't mean that negatively, but something that's going to appease the fan base a little bit, because you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that sometimes that is a part of what your head coach has to deal with in some of these hirings, and opportunities might get skipped because of that reason. And I love that you just hit that nail on the head. If that would have happened, and this coulda, shoulda, woulda, but if that would have happened, what would that have done to you? You know what I mean? Would you continue to work and keep grinding?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because there was a time in there, and this kind of goes back to who Coach Leach is as a person and kind of what he values in people, and kind of how the outside noise didn't really matter to him. There was at that time there was a growing sentiment among the fan base of a couple guys that had been former players there at Mississippi State. There were coaches, really, really good coaches, guys that had won at other programs and been really successful. There was a growing sentiment among the fan base that they wanted those guys to come back, be a part of the state staff and work for Coach Leach. And be good recruiters because they were Mississippi guys and wanted to, all that stuff. So when Coach Leach made the decision to promote me instead of going in some of those other directions, there was a little bit of kind of a, WTF, what's going on?
Right.
Why would he do this when he could go this way and blah, blah, blah. And, but that's not who Coach Leach is. Coach is a guy that he values loyalty. He values people. He values seeing the work. And just because the outside noise says you should hire this person, doesn't mean he's even considering that. So, he kind of knew who I was and knew what I meant to the program. And I wanted to, really, really do a good job to, reward him for having that faith in me. And I really appreciate that. But, to answer your question, had it not gone my way, I would have been bummed. Obviously, it would have been really, really tough to kind of see the work you put in not materialize at the time. But I'm a naturally positive person. I'll take it on the chin. I'll be upset about it for a day or two, but the work's got to go on. Nobody's going to feel sorry for Drew Hollingshead, 2 days from now, even 2 hours from now. So I got to find a way to make myself a better coach, make myself a better, employee, a better teammate, a better, whatever I need to do. So, and then again, learn from it, because when that next opportunity arises, I got to know to handle it better and do what I need to do to make sure that I don't get passed over again. So that was kind of my mentality going into it, and I was always going to keep shooting, no matter what. Yeah,
well, thanks for diving into that. I've talked to a fair share of coaches over the years that might miss out on some of these opportunities, and it just don't really recognize that is some of the heartaches that kind of go through the profession in regards to having a state guy that they might like a lot more than the behind the scenes guy that got hired. So appreciate you sharing that insight. So 22 comes to a halt, and you get the opportunity to go over to Western Kentucky. How'd that opportunity come about? And why did you hop on it?
Yeah. We were in a little bit of a transition, obviously, with coaches passing, but even really before that, I knew that I kind of wanted to, dip my foot in trying to be an OC and trying to call plays. And Western Kentucky was going through a little bit of transition themselves. They had just won 9 games, won a bowl game, and lost their offensive coordinator to funny story. He ends up going to Washington State. So he's going up there to Wazoo, and they had an opening. And, I didn't know Tyson Hilton very much, but I knew his brother Clay a little bit because we played against USC when I was at Washington State. So, I had reached out to Clay about some other things, and he was like, well, hey, I'm going to get you hooked up with my brother over there at WKU, and he's got an open OC position, and he'd love to talk to you and interview you. So, Tyson Hilton here at WKU reaches out to me and asks if I'd be interested in interviewing. So drove up here to Bowling Green and interviewed with him for 2 days and didn't know how it was going to go, but did enough and saw the vision of kind of what they were already doing here at WKU and felt like I could help, keep it rolling and establish the offensive identity that they had kind of set. And he agreed with me and hired me on the spot. And, here we are. So I was very, very fortunate to be even considered for this job and excited to be here.
I do want to brag on you real quick. Led Western Kentucky to the second in conference in scoring, top passing offense in Conference USA, second in Conference USA with 50 offensive touchdowns. So came in, got busy offensively. Now I want to go back because I did want to make sure I talked about what you've been able to accomplish there. But I want to go back. You said a 2-day interview process. I love honing in on interviews because sometimes, there's some guys that get these roles and they don't interview because maybe they interviewed years time, just knowing somebody through relationships or putting other products on the field. But this is one where you physically went and showed up. What was that interview process like? What were some of the things that you did that were maybe unique without spilling too much of, I guess maybe something that Coach Hilton does, if it's any top secret type thing, but what kind of stuff were you doing on that interview process?
Yeah. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn because I do really appreciate the way Coach Hilton went about it. I think it was really thorough, and I think it was I think this is how you find good coaches. And not to stop down, but you were talking about, U of H being kind of a coach's fraternity. Yeah. Western Kentucky is kind of a coach's fraternity too.
It sure is.
There have been a lot of really good coaches that have not only played here but coached here. So I think the way that Coach Helton goes about it kind of speaks to who he is as a person and kind of what we value in our program. And I think it's an important. I've never been a head coach before, but speaking on the way he conducts himself, I think this is kind of one of the best ways to go about it. But anyway, so he wanted me to come up here and the first night I was here, I think this was one of the unique deals was him and his wife took me and my wife out to dinner and we didn't talk about football. We talked about life. We talked about, me and my wife and we had just been newly married, not even a year. We talked about marriage. We talked about life in Bowling Green, Kentucky, if we wanted kids, like the whole thing. So, he got to know me and my wife as people first. And I thought that was really, really interesting. And it was really cool to kind of see that side of him first. Right. And how he, values family in our program and whatnot. And I think there was a reason why he did that too. He wanted to see where my values lied and be around me and my wife and kind of see how we meshed with the families within our program. So I thought that was really cool and they were great and we had a great time and went home and kind of slept on it and was trying to prepare myself for the next day. So got up early, came to the office and he was ready to pepper me with the whole thing. We sat down and talked, scheme, talked roster management, talked about the things we were losing, the things that were coming back, how I was going to handle different situations, recruiting, how I would handle a staff. We were replacing a quarterback coach, offensive coordinator who was myself, but we were also replacing our running backs coach and our wide receivers coach. So there was, ideas on that and who we think we should hire and what direction we should go in that way. And so touched on a bunch of program stuff early on. And then I actually, he kind of let me go. I sat down with our O-line coach who was returning at the time, who had been here for a while. His name's Zach Langford. He's at Georgia Southern now, but Zach's a great coach, great dude. Had been around the WKU program for a long, long time. And he kind of understood, what we wanted out of the program. And I think that's important too. Your quarterback coach, your offensive coordinator's got to gel with the O-line coach too, for sure. So I think that was a really important conversation that needed to happen and we needed to have and for Coach Helton to feel comfortable with the hire. So Zach and I sat down for a while, talked ball, talked life, the whole thing, and left that conversation, went back in with Coach Helton, kind of touched on some other stuff here and there about the offense and the program. And then I think he felt really comfortable with me at that time. And I mean, this was from 8 a.m. to about 6 or 7 p.m. just straight, so he let me go and I get in the car and me and my wife are driving back to Mississippi. I don't get 10, 15 minutes down the road. He calls me back and offers me the job. So awesome. It was a strenuous 2 days, but it was worth it. And really appreciate the professionalism that he had within those 2 days. And really the way he went about it, I think was important. And I think, is why we are successful here at WKU because we've got good people,
Yeah, good people first and the rest falls in place. Man, well,
sure.
Couldn't be more proud of what you've done, what you're accomplishing, man. It was really fun to kind of dive into your bio. I didn't know a lot of this stuff. And just seeing how everybody's path is different, man, and just how a stop in Toronto can sharpen your tools, and 6-7 years of GA and QCing can sharpen those tools to produce an awesome product offensively on Saturdays, man. Well, before I let you go, I want to give you the opportunity to plug in your social medias if anybody wants to keep up with you, ask questions, follow your journey.
Yeah, I'm like every other coach in the country. I'm big on Twitter, so. Follow me at WKU Coach Drew. Would love to interact with coaches and players alike, but I love using that opportunity to not only network, but meet great people and just, talk about this sport we love. So it's a unique avenue and love to interact with coaches across the country.
All right, Coach. We'll make sure to plug that into the show notes, man. Look forward to seeing you in 25. Hopefully we get that opportunity, man. And best of luck to you, okay?
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right, brother. Later.
CoachComm has been delivering tough headsets for tough teams for more than 31 years. It's why 97% of FBS teams and thousands of high schools across the country rely on CoachComm. Get the best for your team. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.